I'm Rod Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. I'm in. I'm in. Barbie's, what was she doing today? There was something. Well, her son is there with his, not fiance, but sounds like that's the direction. Plus, her other son had a grandbaby out there, is all you know. But anyway, I'm really digging that. Oh, hey, hold on. Here's one of my friends. I asked her to comment earlier, and she is a wonderful person. Thank you so much. I told you you'd like this particular, because this is an very artistic person as well. So we all need help. We all, right? We're emotional beings. So I have been, and so is producer Barbie, but so is Ronalda. Awesome. Take it from there, my friend.
Hello.
How are you today?
I am excellent today. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Alexandra. I'm trying to throw in an accent in there because I love
romantic
it.
Way of saying it. Go for it.
Exactly. Let me. Alexandra Belle.
Perfect.
That wasn't too bad, actually. I had to sing like 3 shows ago because it was Barbie's birthday. So not too afraid of messing up a little bit. Don't want to get overboard with it, but yeah, no doubt. Awesome name. Way better subject. So how did we start off? I mean, first of all, as we're talking the green room, I come from a musical and artistic family, and so does producer Barbie. And actually right now, well, there's a couple of people starting to show, but obviously artistic people have a different way of relating to things that go. And what is that background that built you in this direction?
I started off as a dancer. I was obsessed with dance when I was a kid. I already liked the weird stuff. I did it all, ballet and jazz.
Wait. Define weird stuff. I want to hear this.
Like not what you see on maybe mainstream, competition dance. So you think you can dance video. For a period of time, I did. I wanted nothing more than to dance for Janet Jackson when I was 16. But pretty quickly, I liked, the weirder stuff, contemporary, postmodern, etc. Experimental, exploratory, authentic feeling, getting into the awkwardness and sometimes the ugliness of the experience of being a human. So I was a dancer. Yeah. I was also a dancer with an non-traditional body type. I was bigger than dancers that were, making it in their career. But despite that, I, at a pretty young age, 23.
You mean the Twigs?
Yeah.
I know dancers. Yeah, big time. I mean, there's still such a core, not requirement, but vision of what the industry believes the right thing is. And that's awesome, because you weren't cut out of that. You were able to grow and start and begin this journey.
Yeah.
Sorry for cutting you off, but I had to.
Like most of the isms, somebody's, going to be the first, right? First Black doctor, first female president.
Taking the arrows. Yeah.
So I did end up being the first person in this country, at least, of a fairly non-traditional body type to be in a major dance company. So I danced for Bill T. Jones for 7 years, which is a big contemporary modern dance company, toured the world.
Yep.
And then I really got the bug to create work myself. And so I left Bill. I started my own dance theater company. I spent 16 years creating, devising work, touring it, also teaching. During that time, ended up also getting an MFA and
Hold on. I'm writing now. And by the way, we're going to talk about your book. That looks so cool. 2026 it's releasing, right?
Yeah, 1 year.
So anyway, I've started attending and started, this broadcast this show only started because I have a book that I'm looking to query. It's a nonfiction. So you have the platform, and I didn't have any platform. So I needed to start this. Now I can't get back to the book. To be honest, this is way more fun.
It's not easy.
I love to write, but Jesus, criminy.
So somewhere along the way, while I was choreographing and teaching, I was really craving some more scaffolding for my ideas. And I went and got another degree called a CMA, Certified Movement Analyst. And it's a degree in something called Laban and Bartenieff.
LF. The reason I even said that is because I should know this and I've heard it, but what LMF? What LFM?
Laban Movement Analysis. It's a way of,
I've heard that.
Yeah, it's a way of understanding the human body's movements towards meaning. So that led me into theater, and then I started choreographing and eventually directing in theater, and then studied intimacy direction to talk about consent and safety in rehearsal and performance. And eventually I felt like I need to write all this down, and I started writing a book. And that book, called The Anatomy of Art, is going to be coming out through Bloomsbury in a year.
That's awesome. So you're going through the process, and I kind of have an idea what that process is, working back together and back and forth with the publisher.
Yeah.
And I mean, talk about a content that is important to people, especially today. Here's a good question. Let's jump into it, because I'm like 4, 5, 6 behind. How do you stay creatively brave when exactly my problem?
Mm-hmm.
Well, not now, but I mean, at the time, it was hard.
This is an awesome question, and really it is at the heart of the book for me. And one piece of advice that I offer artists of every age is to separate your instinct, intuition, feeling, sensing from your analysis, scientific, judgmental brain. And I don't mean judgmental in a bad way. I mean, I'm going to make a judgment about whether or not this solo goes in the piece. I'm going to make a judgment. It's a Jungian brain function. So I think sometimes when we're in sensing, feeling, intuiting, instinctual mode, beautiful place to be, very creative, very fertile, that analytical brain can start to poke in, often in the form of inner critic. And, when I hear self-doubt, I'm hearing inner critic. I think it's important not to try to do those two brain functions at the same time. They don't play well together. So when I'm in...
That sounds like it would hurt.
Yeah, it does hurt. It does hurt. Self-doubt and the inner critic hurt. When I'm in that intuitive, instinctual mode, and I'm like, I don't know, crazy idea. Let's try this. Sing this song. I don't know why. My advice is to stay there. And when you feel that poking in of, but where is this going? But what does this want to, but does this fit? Is this going to go somewhere? Or, is there going to be product out of this? Just gently but firmly say, not now. The way you would if somebody actually poked their head in your rehearsal studio, that was a person that you knew you could see at any moment, and you could talk to them later, and they did not have an emergency. And someone was like, could I talk to you about next week's schedule? And if you were in the middle of creative flow, you'd go, right now, I'll talk to you later. Right. And so all of those questions that the inner critic can ask you are valid questions. And I do think toggling back to that analytical brain is really important, because the opposite is also true. The inner critic can interrupt that instinctual flow, but also sentimentality and attachment can interrupt our analytical rigor. So when I go into analysis, I'm saying, is this the right order? Does everything fit? Is anything too long? Is anything redundant? Is what's missing? What have I forgotten? What am I attached to that doesn't really need to be here? There's that phrase among artists that you need to kill your babies, which just means I'm going to cut things that I loved because the piece is not requiring them. And so in that mode, that intuitive, analytical, sensing, feeling place is not useful. It's sentimental, it's attached, it's not helpful. So I really think that rending those from each other is one of the most useful things you can do to let self-doubt take a back seat. And then the other thing I like to do, this is a quick one, I sometimes, when I'm alone in a room, feeling safe and also feeling resilient in myself, like I can handle what's about to happen. And this is a personal thing you need to check in with yourself and not just do it because I said do it. I let my inner critic take my body and my voice for a period of time. I say, go ahead, say it all out loud. Don't say it in my head. Go ahead and say it. This book is going to be absolute crap. Nobody's going to buy it. People are going to think you're stupid. Go ahead, say it until you run dry. And then I sometimes have a conversation with them, like, tell me why you think the book is so stupid. Tell me what's behind it. Basically a kind of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, set of ideas to try to talk to my inner critic with that CBT voice in a similar way that you might talk to somebody that was yelling at you from the outside if you were in a really grounded, really calm, centered place and say, tell me more. Where are you getting that information? What's your data? What are you basing that on? And, having a pretty logical conversation with your inner critic after you've let them rant into the room. I think you might be muted. I'm not hearing you.
Testing. Am I back?
You're good.
Sorry.
You're back. You're good.
Sorry about that. What was I going to say?
Well, there's a beautiful question out here if you want me to hit that.
Yeah. But real quick before I lose it all the way. The question you have here is beautiful. Okay. I didn't know that's why you're the expert. But when you talk about, I talk about easily the two sides of my brain, the creative side and the logical side. And when you said that, when somebody's in the artistic, that's a big part of their logic thinking. It's the way they think and see the world. So do you bring back on the conservative side?
Yeah,
to
I go back and forth.
Out?
Yeah, I go back and forth in my creative process between instinct analysis. I use instinct to get things out, put things outside my body into the room. And then I switch into analysis. Gotcha. And I'm like, what happened? What did we make? What do I see? What's interesting? What's grabbing me? What's boring? And I'm pretty rigorous and strict when I'm in my analytical mode. And then when I've made decisions, I go back to instinct and feeling and sensing and saying, okay, so these are the choices I've made. Now, how do I feel in my body to start to lead into this question? Okay. And then toward the end, I go back and forth pretty frequently. Like when we're getting closer to performance, I am like, how's that light hitting me? Oh, I don't like, okay, I think it needs to be cooler, warmer, but more isolating, less isolating, so that's instinct. I'm not feeling that light. Analysis, what is it? The color? Is it the size? Is it the volume of that light? Yeah. Back to, okay, the designer fixes it. Okay, yeah, that's it. I feel it, right? And so back and forth pretty quickly. And like, something like Tech Week in the theater, you're back and forth by the minute. Shall I hit this question?
Yeah, hit this question. And remember I said we're like 4 or 5 behind? Mm-hmm. We're like a dozen and a half behind.
Okay, so, I'll go fast.
You fired up somebody in there.
I would say
Thanks,
that
Ryan.
In that instinctual mode that I was just talking about, it is mostly my body doing the creative decision making. And so for folks that maybe aren't in like a rehearsal performance life, but are interested in their creativity in their day-to-day life, what that feels like is, when you're in bed and you're trying to find the right position and it's not right and then all of a sudden you hit it and you're like, oh, your whole body relaxes. Or you get so just that right amount of salt in your soup and you're like, that's it, no more salt. That's perfect. What's missing now? Yeah. Something acid. I need a little squeeze of lemon in this soup, right? And so those bodily instincts and sensations that you get, opening up to your faith in them allows you this whole world of making decisions, creative decisions with your body. So I would say most of my creative decisions are made with my body. How do you approach collaboration without losing your voice?
I saw this and I went, okay, I love this one because I kind of know a little bit about this. Go ahead.
And we're talking about like your intention, your agenda, your mission, your metaphorical voice, not your actual voice. Yeah.
Right. Right.
I think curiosity. I am always developing excitement for what somebody else's vision, perspective, input might bring to me that I had not considered before. So I try to stay out of attachment and in curiosity. And certainly I've had collaborators come in with ideas, costume ideas or whatever. And, to go back to Ryan's question, like, ooh, my body does not like that. Even then, I try to hold off making a decision just then, because sometimes I just need to get out of habit, or I just need to get out of my expectation or, my fantasy. Maybe there's something I hadn't considered. Sometimes it is going to end up being a no. And there's also like whether you're the lead artist or you really are all peer artists and it is fully a collaboration. So often I'm the director of a project. So even though these are my collaborators and I absolutely want their voices like loud and proud, ultimately final decisions are going to be mine. So that, creates a slightly different dynamic, flow, and hierarchy. In true collaborative model, often what I do is, and this is a Laban thing, this movement analysis practice that I teach, is to zoom out to a bigger and bigger question. Say that again.
Where are you located?
I'm in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn. So we're talking about things that you teach people, like what we're doing right here, right? I would assume off your internet or something.
And I teach at the Laban Institute. So I teach other people that are going to become movement analysts to get their degrees. But that's part awesome. Of it is this idea of opening the aperture of your lens to bring in more context. So sometimes if a collaborator and I are having a little bit of friction or we're not quite on the same page, I will zoom out bigger to say like, okay, what's the bigger thing that we're trying to get at here? What's the goal? What's the overarching intention that we can agree on? And sometimes we need to go pretty big to say, we're trying to have everything feel like it's got a lot of flow and momentum, is something that we agree on. And then we can go into like, okay, these costumes don't feel like they have flow and momentum. How do you feel about that? Right. So sometimes I'll go all the way back to something we agree on and then come back into more detail and talk about, what we're maybe having friction about.
And it's important that collaborators, that you're not strong enough, that you believe in your message, because collaborators are as talented at that as you are. Yeah. Maybe not the whole thing, but you can really lose your voice in doing that, not on purpose by either one, depends on personalities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that, so that was sort of the one side of it, in that, like, I don't want to take over the situation. I don't want to be a bully. And then on the other side of the situation, sometimes you can make yourself so small that you do lose your own flow, perspective, intention, agenda. And so going back to your own big picture and saying, this is what I'm passionate about. This is why I started making this work. This is what's really important to me. Maybe the detail of that color is not important to me, but this thing is important to me. Can we go back to agreeing on that? So I think really from both sides, the like taking too much space or losing your space, both can be accomplished by zooming out and going to the bigger picture.
Great usage, or great activity, great thing. That's a great way to, I mean, you can see that. Wait, there's a bigger picture here I'm missing because we both know and we're not connecting here. That's a great analysis.
Shall I tackle this one? Damien's question,
absolutely.
in what ways does identity influence your movement and teaching style? I think it depends on what part of identity we're talking about.
That's what I was wondering.
Certainly there are these markers that are maybe sometimes more visible. I identify as a woman. I identify as a progressive. Politically, I identify, All
right, come on, let's go right now. Let's go right now.
Wait,
you're Jewish?
I am.
You're Jewish?
Mm-hmm.
Jewish and would you say liberal?
Progressively, right? Liberal.
Progressively. I have a really good friend of mine out in California. He's a director, and he's and I love that because it's not exactly what you always hear about. But this isn't a political show, but I couldn't resist when you said that. Absolutely. So,
not going into details.
Anyway,
I would say that I don't feel like those maybe more like social political identity markers feel like they influence my movement, creativity, or my teaching, but other ways in which I identify, and that does include being neurodivergent, having a neurodivergent brain. It includes feeling that I'm a healer. It includes feeling that I am like a sensitive, a deeply feeling person in the world. Like those things feel like deeper identities to me than being white or being a woman. That being said, the thing that I feel most passionate about is authenticity, and that means authenticity for everyone. And it means making space in the room for everybody to center their identity in whatever way they need to. So I do feel like I adapt and adjust movement and teaching style to different types of learners, people who feel like they have different needs within a shared community, people who feel like they've been less visible and are like craving more visibility. All of those things I want to be able to support.
That is, it's amazing because this whole show is about the great middle class. We already talked about this. What concerns them, that population, the 1%ers have all the they have access to all the information they need to grow and be the perfect them that they have available. You can't tell somebody something you don't know, right? So you get into a place where this is a way to approach looking inside yourself and building that within yourself. We do a lot of different topics, like I was saying, it's the whole middle class. So we dive into a bunch of different topics, and this is it's a completely, to me, and probably to a lot more people, fascinating, interesting, and unique way of changing your narrative to be everybody knows that word these days, to get to a point to affect people in what you're teaching. But what you're saying makes so much sense. The things make so much, and the way you're describing it's very, very unique. It's fascinating. I appreciate that. So here is the next one. I'll read it. What's the biggest lesson you learned from performing with Bill Jones? Oh, I see you. Yeah, you have a lot of input on this question, don't you? I saw the little.
I think I learned so much from Bill. He's really a genius. He's also a person for whom his passion and fire for art can be consuming for him and for the people around him. And that you need to, which I did not when I joined the company, develop your own sense of boundaries and how much you're willing to give.
Define, because there's
how
a
much
lot
you're
of
willing to
stories
give, how much on stage, in process of yourself, in community. And I think I wouldn't trade that time of my life for anything. I wouldn't trade the lessons I learned with him, from him, around him for anything. But I over gave for a period of time of my body and of my like interdependence with the company and the work we were making, like was enmeshed in a certain way. And I was young. I was 23 when I joined the company. I couldn't, retroactively have expected anything different from myself. But over time, I realized that I also could say no. I also could adapt and change things, or ask for things to adapt and change. And I remember at one point he said at a Q&A after a performance that, and I'm going to paraphrase, I don't remember his verbatim quote, but something like, I believe that every time you go on stage as an artist, you are setting yourself on fire in front of the audience. And for a period of time, I really was with him on that. And then toward the end, I realized I'm not sure I agree with that it always has to be like that. I do think that's one way. And I think that that's something that's so profound about him, is that he is willing to do that. And I also felt like, what if I want to communicate? What if I want to reach people just by being myself and not setting myself on fire, just being? And it was something that took, my maturation in the company to get to. But I would say that the biggest thing I learned with him, and I don't mean this in any kind of disrespectful way for him, his work, or, his company, but one of the biggest things I learned was to say no, and to say, that's actually not what I believe, even though you're probably the most charismatic, compelling human I've ever been in contact with in my life. It doesn't have to overwhelm what I think, feel, and believe. And so to be around somebody who's larger than life in so many ways and say, I see you, I appreciate that, I don't agree. I have a different feeling. I've taken that on. I've tried it on. I'm taking it off. I don't agree with it. And, certainly it wasn't like that about everything, but that was a huge lesson that was hard earned for me in the company.
Yeah, that is a tough lesson. The creativity that you're expressing came through growth and came through experience and came through things that are along your journey, and that's a fascinating thing. I want to get to this one, and then I want to ask you a follow-up question.
Okay. How do you protect your creative energy while mentoring others? These were such great questions.
I'm really excited by them. Yeah.
And my book is in part a book of questions. So I fancy myself a connoisseur of questions, and these are really good, all of them. And you're picking good ones. How do I manage my creative energy, protect my creative energy while mentoring others? The one word answer is curiosity. Curiosity makes me creative. So it not only nourishes and feeds my creativity, but it protects my own creative spirit. So curiosity, and what I mean by that is I talk a lot about giving feedback in a constructive and healthy and still challenging way to artists, but this holds true for any kind of constructive feedback. And I think we all know that feedback can be damaging and abusive and painful and hurtful and traumatic. And also it can be kind of fluffy and non-essential and not super helpful, like, stroking your ego. Neither of those really do what feedback's supposed to do, which is catalyze somebody to do their best version of themselves, whether that's their best art or their best, therapeutic process, etc. And one of the things that I think is the most important is to try to find a way to set aside my opinions by turning the volume of my curiosity up. And what that looks like is an artist shows me something and I have an opinion about it. I thought that section was too long. I thought that duet felt derivative. I felt like you were trying to manipulate me. Something didn't sit right. I didn't, for no better words, I'll say, like, I didn't enjoy that. That's not useful. So rather than being like, okay, I have an opinion, but I'm going to shut up and not say my opinion, I'm going to say a bunch of nice things and then, give one piece of advice and move on. That's not really helping the artist either. And it's not really being authentic. What I'm going to say is, and this is really hard work, is my opinion is not really relevant here. What is relevant is getting underneath my opinion and getting quite curious about why I had that opinion. What felt derivative to me, what felt manipulative to me, what is happening in this dance that's in front of me or piece that's in front of me that's creating these feelings. The feelings are mine and another person might not have those feelings. So those feelings themselves, which are the opinion, not super relevant. But saying, okay, what are you trying to do here? Well, I'm trying to create this duet that's showing intimacy. Oh, okay. Yeah. They are so far away from the audience that we're not getting the nuances of their little looks, or they're not making little looks, or they walk across the stage to each other. They're not making eye contact. And then they just start dancing as soon as they get to each other. There's no sensing, there's no intuiting, there's no relating, there's no intimacy that's going to happen.
Intimacy, yes.
Yeah, everything is so well rehearsed, so crafted. Yeah. I'm not feeling intimacy. So how I protect my creative spirit is by trying to do the work to set my opinions truly aside and get curious. So rather than like, that section was really long and I didn't enjoy it, I'm saying, like, what did you want from that duration? Like, why that duration? Tell me. And not just like, why is it long? But like, actually curious. What made you want it to be a 10-minute duet? Tell me. And, maybe the artist says, I kind of wanted you to get bored in the middle, honestly, because I feel like something else might happen with your nervous system once you're bored. And then I might be like, I was bored in the middle. Let's see, did something happen with my nervous system? What are you hoping will happen with their nervous system? Oh, interesting. What are you putting in to try to facilitate that? Okay. I didn't feel that. Let's check in with some other people and see if that nervous system thing happened for them. But the only way I can do that is if I set aside the, like, I didn't like that, because that part's not useful to them, but it's also not useful to me, and it's not creative. So the curiosity inspires my own creativity.
That is an excellent way to put a dot on the end of that particular thought. Not that you didn't already know that, but a couple things there. So when going back to your growing up in the and learning from the gentleman you learned from, and him teaching, I'm not judging here, man, because I don't know, but I'm interested why there's always this one direction, because as you're talking about now, and even more important in a character, whether it be dance or acting or whatever, in the character that you play, just like the thing we're doing right now, you have to be authentic, because if you aren't, you could be the best actor in the world. The best ones get it, or dancer, they get it, their energy from connecting with the message, whether it may be all their life, or need to connect. You have to be authentic or people lose it, right? And I loved your comment on curiosity. There's a famous poet, I forgot his name, but I watched this show. We won't get into all that, but at one point there was this competition of between an owner of a football team and a guy that went through a divorce and headed over to America to make his life. But the point is, through this discussion he had with the guy, is it Walt Whitman? I'm going blank. Ernest Hemingway. So I'll just name them all. I'm bound to be right on one of them there. But his point was, as I was picking up my kid and leaving, I used to always it'd be irritating. I felt bad that people were judging me all the time. Were judging me. And then he was turning the corner, see this thing painted on the wall that said, "Be curious, not judgmental." What a freaking difference in your whole entire life. Because if you're judgmental, from your view, it is what it is. But if you're curious, exactly what you said about your entire life.
And I would add to that, it's not just an outer curiosity. It needs to be focused on yourself just as much, if not more, than it is on the outside. And, that is a way that I do think we could generate less self-criticism, less inner criticism, and more empathy also for others.
Empathy. Yeah. It changes I know this from a personal experience. Making these kind of changes dramatically change your life, your influence, the way you see things, the way the world now comes to you, all sorts of things. I didn't do it in a good way, and I'll tell you about it someday, but it's all over the show. I had a break. I had a mental, thing. I was in business. I have been in business for like 40 years, but building this thing up, this was coming on. Then I had a stroke. I had a motorcycle accident that broke all the bones on this side of the body. The ribs were in like 5 pieces. I mean, I've got so much metal here. Yeah, it's big time. But anyway, so when that happened, you talk about having somebody more knowledgeable, which is what you're saying. I know how to bring you through this process. Let me guide you through this process on a much lower level. And by the way, I know Barbie's got to be here because she is so exactly on message with you. It's there's a lot of people are, but the at that point, I was in Fort Lauderdale at a plastics exhibition, the biggest one in America, and I had a breakdown. I had to make it through that week. But as I came from that, and Barbie started giving me help and talking and going through and knowing my body, because there were a couple of weeks I couldn't go out of the apartment. But anyway, I got through that journey, and that journey changed my life. Not only brought me back from not, being scared of everything, being insecure about everything. She said that I kept packing stuff in departments in my head, and finally it just busted. And it sucks that it happened, but I'd like a better way, like what you're talking about, to make it happen. But my entire life changed. Authenticity became who I am, where I was always behind a mask. I was a salesman, performing to get the PO, and always use the word JR because it sounded better. I told you I was insecure younger on. Well, that was my whole problem. I had this mask over my face, this persona of JR, kept me in a place and a feeling and a way and thoughts that weren't anywhere near the best thing for me. As soon as that happened and I got through that, I see the world is totally different.
There's a really beautiful interview, and unfortunately I don't remember who was interviewing him, but Jim Carrey on I think like a late night show. And
I saw that.
Yeah, where he's just saying, my whole life I was playing this part of Jim Carrey, and at a certain point I just broke and I couldn't do it anymore. And when you see his body sitting there and his face, he's a different person than the person I had always thought of as Jim Carrey. Even Jim Carrey out of the movies, off the screen, but still that mask of Jim Carrey, no pun intended, was
he
so
did
strong.
great example. He that's a great example. He did a movie called The Mask, right? Wasn't that him?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Shall I tackle this question?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you balance? Oh, go ahead.
How do you balance structure with spontaneity in your creative process? And
Great
I think
question.
that really goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning, separating instinct from analysis. So when I'm in spontaneity and free flow, I do not interrupt myself. I don't let any inner critic come in the room. I don't ask myself, where's this going? Where's it headed? I might put a time limit on it if I'm feeling stressed about productivity. But for the most part, I do not let myself interrupt with facts, figures, statistics, analysis. And then the same thing on the opposite end. When I'm trying to make decisions and trying to be clear-headed, I'm a little cold-hearted with myself. And I say, I know you loved that section, or I know you spent a long time on that, or I know there was a lot of research that went into that, but the piece doesn't need it. And I'm gonna listen to the piece instead of listening to either of these voices in my head, the sentimental voice or the critical voice. So separating them. Oh, very nice.
And takes, yes, exactly. And takes some, and then I want to go to the question before this. I had to drop that in there, Danny. It's very great. Because your approach, obviously, your background is from the artistic world, and the people that are in there relate because you have that background. But everybody everybody needs this, and I'm assuming, well, who knows? Maybe he is an artistic gentleman, but he looks like a businessman, Danny. No pun intended, but awesome question or comment. And right, everybody needs that.
100%. I mean, creativity, especially in this country and in capitalism, gets marginalized, and people feel like, oh, artists are creative, and I'm, as you separated
Productive.
that, like, oh, you're a business person. Of course,
right.
Creativity just means I am creating. Engineers create, mathematicians create, scientists create, more than probably any other form, right? Scientists create as much as artists create, right? You have an idea, you're trying to figure out how to bring it to fruition, your trial and error, and eventually, hopefully, an outcome that feels like it's communicable to the world. So creativity is everywhere. It's where you put your bed in your bedroom, it's the color of your shirt, it's the salt in your food. Every time we wake up and start our day, we are creating our day. And we have so many more choices than we think we do. We often fall into so much habit that habit becomes expectation, and expectation becomes oppression. And
that's a vicious circle.
I'm interested in letting everything be a creative choice, even if I'm pretty sure I know what choice I'm going to make. Like, am I going to make my kids dinner tonight? I could not. I could say, no, I'm not doing it tonight. I don't want to, and I'm not doing it. I doubt I'm going to say it. It doesn't really follow my values and beliefs and how I want my children to feel in their lives. But I would like it to be an active choice to say, I'm really tired, don't feel like cooking. I have these two boys that I really love, and I want them to feel valued and cared for, and they're hungry. I am going to make dinner anyway, even though I'm not feeling like it. But it just feels different to me walking into the kitchen saying, I've chosen to do it, rather than like, I have to go make dinner. There's just something different about it. It feels creative. Next question.
Before you do that, what you're talking about is a vibe now, right? I mean, you're saying I've decided your whole vibe. I believe in the earth. There's nature and a lot of things to talk about, but there's a wave, there's a connection out there where you are as a person putting out into, like you said, out into the world. Sorry, I have two big dogs, and every once in a while I'm doing, they're over in the offices, but if you hear a bark, that's probably going to be Daisy trying to harass Boomer. So anyway, there's there's a place where we send out for feet away to us, people can feel how your vibe is, and that's a really and that obviously, and that's a really important thing to know that you have, because you're become suddenly aware that you're affecting, for the better or the worse, technically, maybe even for a second, you're affecting their life either negatively, like you said, or positively, right? Right. So you want to go with, how do you balance structure with spontaneity?
We just talked about this one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I thought we were
I feel like we put a period on that. Yes, dismantling old artistic habits. Yeah, great question. You have such a smart audience. I love these questions.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with habits. The word habit in art gets a bad rap. We need habits, and habits are also a way to start to solidify our values and beliefs and interests and desires and passions. And then, as I was just saying, like, habit can become so habitual, that we stop, it becomes the baseline, and then from there we start shrinking, and then that becomes the baseline and shrinking. So when I do feel like habit is starting to limit my choices, then I want to disrupt my habits. So nothing wrong off the top with habit, and we may hit a place where habits, it's limiting me right now. So a few different things, and this is basically what my entire book is about disrupting artistic habits. One thing I talk about is going through. So if you always go through your house, I'm assuming through a particular door, probably the front door, maybe the back door. Maybe you've got two doors if you're not in New York, and you alternate them based on whether you walked or drove or something. But for the most part, you probably go into your house through one entrance. And so what you see when you walk in that entrance tends to be about the same thing. And so if that house that we're walking into is our artistic process or our creativity, I'm curious about sometimes going through a window, somebody coming in through somebody else's apartment through a trap door that you've made. Basically, how do you get into your own process through from a different place? And so that can be really simple. Like, I'm going to shake up some habits around just the structure of my process. I always rent space during the day while my kids are in school at this one particular place for 2 hours. And that's when I do my creative process. Great. I'm sure that worked in your life. And I'm not saying do something different all the time if it doesn't work with your parenting schedule. But let's do something different. Spend 8 hours in a row making something, go away for a day, work in a new space, work, with obstacles. So obstacles are an amazing way, and we know this just from life, that when we're suddenly faced with an obstacle, we get creative, right? Oh, my, those materials didn't show up and I have to make such and such, right? My grocery order didn't deliver and I have a dinner party. What am I going to make? Or, this didn't happen and I have to, what am I going to do? So we know that obstacles inspire creativity. So we can give ourselves obstacles. You're not allowed to, sometimes I like to make just a list of habits and just say, 2 of them you've got to break today. And one of them you want to invest in really deeply, deeper than you usually do. So if you
put more into it,
Yeah, like, if usually anatomy is one of the biggest inspirations for how I create movement vocabulary, I'm going to get like super nerdy and like bring my anatomy books and like make a phrase that's not just, celebrating anatomy, but like getting even deeper into it in a research way. And if usually I make a phrase and I teach it to my dancers and then I have them create duets out of it, instead, I'm going to today improvise and have them follow me and have them try to remember one thing that they loved and then have them turn that into something that's their own, right? So I'm just going to give myself an obstacle. I'm going to look at what I usually do and I'm going to say, 2 of those things I'm not allowed to do at all. And one of those things I'm going to do even more than I usually do. So that's one way to break some creative habits.
That's a bumper. I use this description. That's a way to put bumpers so that when you're a kid, you bowl, you don't get in the gutters, right? Those are pretty darn good bumpers you're talking about here. I want to go to a question real quick, but Nick, thank you so much. So grateful for this conversation. It's like a master class in authenticity, and to drive authenticity in deeper and deeper is not ever going to be a bad thing, ever. My new favorite friend, Nick, this is the second question he's asked: how can artists learn to trust their instincts more? And that's at the heart of what you do. That's what you create.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And of course, not just artists, everything that we're talking about is for all of us. So I used to teach at Princeton, and my class was predominantly made up of people who had either never danced before or like had danced when they were, 12 and hadn't danced for a while. They didn't identify as dancers. They weren't trying to be dancers. It was called Introduction to Contemporary Dance. And as part of it, I also made them choreograph, which was really scary for them, but they were so amazing. And one thing that I often did was students would be showing their work in the main space, and we'd all be sitting out here as the audience watching. And I would model this a couple times, and I'd say, when something really grabs you, you feel it, to go back to a question that we had in the beginning, feeling it with your body, making creative decisions with your body. But when I feel it in my body, like somebody did something and I was like, ooh, that was cool, or I felt myself leaning in, I'm going to say, stop. And can I just see that again? And, could you try it from a different angle? So, but that moment that my body has that spark of recognition, something just happened. Something's happening right now. My goal was to get my Princeton students quicker with that spark. So I would model it a couple times, but then I turned it over to them and said, okay, you're all the director of the piece. You're all doing what I just did. We're watching. And when your body goes, oh, what was that? I want you to say, stop. And so I was trying to get the alacrity, the speed of their intuition fired up. And really what I think I'm just asking them to do is sense more and be willing to take that vulnerable risk to say, that meant something to me.
Yeah. We talked about this one a little bit earlier, sort of. Because there's good feedback and there's not so good feedback. What role does feedback play in the creative development? I think it plays a big role, good or bad, depending on what that feedback is, right? You were talking about it. I was talking, yeah.
And there are a lot of factors, and I want to just name and credit Liz Lerman, who developed something called critical response process, which is a way of giving feedback that has 4 parts. The first part is called statements of meaning, and these tend to be what we might call positive. I was really excited by the colors. There was a lot of vigor in the movement, et cetera, et cetera. The second part is questions from the artist. And this is the heart of her process. The artist themselves gets to frame what they want to know and why they want to know it. And artists are, they're all different human beings, different neurodivergences, different sensitivities, different points in their artistic life, and different points in that process of the artistic process. So like that piece, different moments need different things, but in your whole arc as an artist, you need different things, right? And I have people come to me and they're like, don't sugarcoat anything. I don't need to hear anything. Just like tell it like it is, blah, blah, blah. You know, and I have other people who are like, just be careful, like be careful with me. And those are all really important things, but that's really just about language and tone. What I'm interested in is, what do you need out of this right now? I don't care what I think. I care what you need and why you need it. Now, I may sometimes have a question about what they say they need, right? Like maybe they just say, I just need some validation right now. I need to know that this is something to somebody else's eyes. That's a perfectly valid question. And I might still want to dig into it to say, tell me why that validation feels important to you right now. Tell me why somebody else's view of the work feels necessary. Like what is not happening in your system that you feel like you need that? And it's not that I can't give that to you, but I do think there might be something interesting underneath it. So that's part of what happens. And then the third section is questions from the audience, but what Liz Lerman calls neutral questions, meaning I'm not trying to embed an opinion, a suggestion, advice into my question. Like, did you mean for that to be so, there are ways that we can enmesh an opinion or a judgment into a question. It's not really a question. It's a question, and it's a wolf in sheep's clothing question.
Yeah, it is.
So I do think that honoring what the artist needs or the person needs out of the feedback is the most important thing. And if you've ever been in a, like a heteronormative discussion, and I say heteronormative because this tends to stereotype into like, men often want to like give you a solution to something, and women often I just wanted you to hear me. And they can get into friction around it. So in those like heteronormative relationships, sometimes if they fall into some of those stereotypes, obviously not everybody's like this. And like, I love it when my partner fixes something for me. And
I saw that personally.
Yeah.
Hey guys, everybody out there, I just want to let you know, we were in the green room and I said, hey, that's the second time in 3 interviews or conversations that hubby showed up. And so that was funny. So yes, I know for a fact that you love it when your IT guy comes to make the world
and
good.
I also, in specific circumstances from specific people, when solicited, love advice. I just don't necessarily want unsolicited advice when, from people I'm not necessarily in a trusting relationship with. But the bigger point is that if that person who just wants to be heard could preface what they're saying with, I don't need any advice. I don't want you to solve this for me. I don't want you to take this on. I just need to, part of me just needs to hear it out loud. And I want a witness for this. So I actually just want to talk until I feel done. And then I just want you to hold my hand and make some eye contact with me and say, thank you for sharing, or something like that, some version of that. If a person who that's what they wanted was able to articulate that before they went into their whole thing, instead of going into their whole thing and then their partner is like, well, you could do this, or maybe you should do that. And they're like, I feel attacked. This isn't what I wanted. You never said what you wanted. You never shared it. You never expressed it. So I want artists to express their needs for the feedback before the feedback, to say, this is the point in my process. This is what will work for me. This is what I don't want. This is what will shut me down. They don't have to go into, a huge monologue about it, but I will structure feedback in such a way that I'm eliciting the artist's needs and letting them frame the feedback so that the feedback is adapting to the artist rather than the artist adapting to the feedback.
There's a big difference in those two things in anybody. If you're there's more of a buy-in, there's more of a connection, obviously. That's really the only way to go, right? And I'm going to say, Clayton, I don't think there's any more questions, but there's a whole lot of fan club out there you got. For instance, great show, great guest, great energy. Fire. Thanks, Clayton. And then again, loving this live, so much truth being spoken here. You know, I cannot agree with you more. I totally, I'm biased, but I agree. All right. So yeah, this has been a great show, honestly, and obviously. So grateful for this conversation. It's like a master class in authenticity. You know, you better not get too big of a head here. You know, you got to be able to walk through the doorways, right? The last two are people you and I talked about a couple of times today, and I talk about all the time. Both extremely artist. I knew producer Barbie BSR would be on here. Beautifully inspiring message and a beautiful spirit. There's a world that connects even deeper with artistic people. I believe that if when you're artistic, you're more able to you're more able to do the things for people that because you don't know if you're not that way, right? You're not creative. It's a different world. I know that for a fact. But I'm going on to, if you remember here, Ronaldo, very, very creative person. And you have to feel in your soul to really show your creative energy, kind of balancing or adding to the authenticity, right?
Yeah.
Great comment.
There's a book by Ben Shahn called The Shape of Content, and in it is a chapter called Biography of a Painting. And in that chapter, he talks about,
I like that.
He talks about how a lot of artists are essentially trying to please everyone in their audience, every possible person. And what it does is just make their art generic and actually doesn't really connect at a truthful level, at a deep level with anybody. And he said, might seem counterintuitive, but the more specific, personal, even idiosyncratic, deeply human, and just your art is, the more likely it is to touch a larger group of people. So if I'm talking about like, oh, just grief is like this and grief is like that, everyone's like, yeah. Da, da, da. But if I'm like, the day after my father died, I found a pair of his glasses in my pocketbook. And I was searching around my pocketbook for something, and I pulled out these glasses, and I realized he'd handed them to me, and there's some story attached to this. I'm making it up, so I don't have the rest of the story, right? But there's some story attached to it. And you tell this story about this thing that happened the day after your dad died. And suddenly all these people are like, it's not the glasses in the pocketbook, but they have their own glasses in the pocketbook moment, or they have a tremendous sadness that they have no glasses in the pocketbook moment because they were estranged from their father. But the story is so specific, it sparks specificity in the audience in a way that just like, talking about grief as a genre doesn't do, right? It becomes
no emotion,
reductive.
Yeah, reductive, great word. Ooh, I love that word, reductive. That is very cool. So Ronaldo, again, I really appreciate your support here. And this is producer Barbie. I told you she was on here. I guaranteed it. She is producer Barbie, as you all know, beautiful, inspiring message and a beautiful spirit. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what we are, is our spirit. And we're always talking about fixing this or that, or getting rid of anxiety and all these things. It's all about your spirit. You control that, like you said, through the body is giving more than it's receiving. And that's the way it should be right there, I think. anyway, any last thoughts, my newest best friend?
No, this was a lovely conversation. I just want to say thank you to your incredible audience for these beautiful questions. They were really, I'm not blowing smoke, really good questions.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm from a musical background, but I have no idea what they're talking about. So I'm glad you said that. I knew they were great questions, but I don't hold any water here. At the end of the day, I appreciate you being here. Why don't you give your whole new fan club, as my dog's starting to go nuts, a wave hello and then goodbye.
Awesome. So hello, and my name is Alexandra Beller, probably listed on the screen. And if you just Google my name, my website comes up, and there's just a ton of ways to reach me, etc. No?
No, you're going to, if you don't mind,
yeah,
go into the private chat. For some reason, yes, Daisy, give me a second, knock it off. She's got to go. And put it in the private chat, and then that way, before we shut the show, we put it in the can. Then that will be there, because inevitably people are going to come back and ask questions, and I'm not the expert, but I can get them straight through to you, or they don't even look at me. They go, okay.
Well, that's so when
oh, there it is. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of wrap out the show. You'll see what producer Barbie looks like. You'll get that comfort level with her. So comments and paste and boom. Right. Oh yeah. Okay. There you go. All right. So did I get it all right? Was my cut and paste accurate? Oh, you're like me. You can't see crap.
No, I can't see anything. I'm 52.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't see anything at all. I mean, these things are dynamic. They're like a 6.0. It's like my vision sucks because I've written so much all over time. But anyway, give everybody a big wave goodbye, and I appreciate a great day today.
Thank you.
Really a great day. All right. Well, there we have it. That was cool. That was very, very, very cool. The way, and we talk about, okay, so a lot of our subjects are about particular subjects. And in those captive spaces of that subject, mental health, finances, cryptocurrency, we're starting right now, had a couple of meetings about it this morning. And then producer Barbie and I have also been kind of looking at some ways to do this, but we're going to start offering a program called it's called a watch party. That's where I'm going with right now. Who knows? But we're already getting ready to start releasing a program where I don't know if any of you have heard of School, but School is a community-based place that people can come in and go and come and go, and they have access for however the permission you give them is, and you just record data information, and then you can, from there, we're able to even get deeper into the conversation with you. And to me, aging Americans that are coming up on the AI wave is I tell the story all the time. I'm not going to take up time now to do it, but look out for that, because like this stuff, it's important, and you know it. I mean, 350 or so people were here. Now that you're gone, we're down to 63. See what I told you? I told you, Alexandria, that they don't like listening to me. I don't blame them. But at the end of the day, my name is Rod Duff. I am hosting right now and continually on Insights and Straight Talk with Rod Duff and producer Barbie. So look us up, ask questions, take down Ms. Beller's contact information. Like I said, we look at subjects from different angles just to drill down on where that, because sometimes you gather a couple of things from a couple of different sources and have a life effect that's way better than you could have ever imagined. And with that, I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.